people listening to me are today. I figured that you're involved in data some way, shape, or form, whether you're the DBA, whether you do ETL, and this means you're responsible for the data, one way or the other. Well, a lot of the time, people expect you'll have the answers, and you may. If you've been working for the data a long time where you work, you got a lot of domain knowledge, not just about things like where it's stored, but how the data is supposed to look and whether or not it quote-unquote looks right. I can't tell you the number of times that I've given somebody a report to look it over and they're like, yeah, it doesn't look right. And then it's off to the races and figuring out what's wrong with the data to make the report look right. Since I'm not a consultant, a lot of the times I don't have a whole lot of domain knowledge or really intricate, knowledge about the systems that are used to enter the data. And I can't tell the answers are right. I have to rely on business users to help me out, and sometimes that works. And sometimes when the data's wrong, it looks like this, finger pointing. There's a lot of rules involved to determine if something looks right. And let's face it, finding out the data's wrong before it's loaded is a much better place to find it out than, say, when a report hits a CEO's desk. DQS, Data Quality Services, can be a part of the process to make your data right early. And also, it can move the responsibility from the DBA or the business intelligence, developer, move it from there and towards the people who are actually entering the data. And that way they can help change it. So today I want to talk about DQS, obviously, and let you know how it works. And there's an interface for it, as well as you can use it within SSIS. And like any tool, there are times to use it, and there are times that it won't be the best solution. Lastly, I want to touch on a concept which I think needs to get more attention, data governance, and how DQS can be a part of that. So getting started with DQS, well, Data Quality Services is a part of SQL Server 2012 and, of course, SQL Server 2014, and you may not have seen it before. If you're thinking to yourself, why don't I see it on my machine? I installed everything. Join the club. That's exactly what I was thinking when I first read about it. I'm not going to get into detail on how to install DQS because I wrote a blog post about DQS, your DIY guide to getting started, so that way you can figure out what the steps involved are to getting all this up and coming. As part of the installation, DQS will create 3 databases for itself to use: DQS main, DQS project, and DQS staging. And that's why I put my little management studio up here. Let me zoom in so you can see. You can see that I've got these databases which SQL creates: main, projects, and staging. This is how you know that you have Data Quality Services installed correctly. You don't get to rename them. And for the most part, you don't have a whole lot to do with them. DQS main contains the DQS store procedures, the DQS engine, and the published knowledge bases. If you look at a table, which we'll do later, called a knowledge base, you can see a list of everything you do within it. DQS projects contains all the quality project information. It creates a domain for each project and dynamically inserts a lot of data. DQS staging data is the one database you may use because it's optional, and it's just a place that you can put data should you wish to do so. These 3 databases let you know that it's installed on the server, but there's more to it than that because there is a client install. And this of course, doesn't have to be installed on a server because who would install an application for business users on your server, right? This is the interface that people can use who are not necessarily technically savvy, and allows them to walk through the data and be in charge of fixing it. Well, let me go ahead and get into the demo. To paraphrase some song lyrics, it's time for a lot less slides and a lot more action. So, all right. The first thing I'm going to show you is Data Quality Services. I just opened up the application, and this is what you get, a blank screen with your server on it. Well, since that is the right server, I only have one on this laptop, I'm going to go ahead and connect. So the sample data that I'm using today is loosely derived from a real-world example at a previous client. I used to do some work for a company that had several for-profit colleges. And when I worked there, they had buildings full of telemarketers on the phone trying to get people to sign up to be part of higher education. And how did they get those phone numbers? From companies who are in the business of providing leads. You ever see those commercials where they try to get you to call generally really late at night and say, you too could be going to college? Yeah, the people who put those ads up are getting $50 for each person who calls them up and gives them their information. And that information is sent out to every for-profit university that they can think of. And my client paid those lead generators $50 for every valid lead. I know what you're thinking. How can I get in on this business? And I have an answer. I have no idea. What I can tell you is this. Those lead generator companies want their $50. They're going to sell the same lead multiple times if they can get away with it. And where I was working, they got away with it because they didn't implement something to really validate the data before they went and paid for it, which didn't make any sense. Lead generation companies have no wish to provide good data, clean data, or new data. After all, if people aren't smart enough to check what they're buying, they get $50. So this is a situation where cleaning up the website, there isn't one, and the people giving you data, they want to send you bad data. So it's up to you to figure out how to fix it. So what do we do with data quality services to fix bad data? Well, as you can see on the screen here, there's got 3 sections, and this looks very friendly because it's supposed to. The first section is a knowledge base. Knowledge bases are where it's a container, kind of like blob storage in Azure. You create the blobs so you can put the containers in it. So let's go ahead and open a knowledge base. And I'm going to open up the DQS data. Now, what you can see here by looking at it, because what's highlighted is what you're looking at it, is this already contains information that's provided by DQS already loaded. So if you go into, if you want to go into this information already has this information, so you can standardize on it. And this reference information was provided by Microsoft as part of the as part of data quality services. And these are standard 3-character country names that are used, and you can see the idea being is that if you get something that says AF, it'll correct to AFG, which is Afghanistan, and it'll even do it if it comes in Arabic, which is kind of cool, since that's very difficult for me to read anyway. The same thing with U.S. states. Gone are the days where you need to go ahead and generate your own state list that's already in data quality services for you, and you can see that it will look at the abbreviation ARK period, say that it's wrong, and correct it to Arkansas. Now, this is obviously wanting to correct to the full name. If you want two letters, it connects. This is how it would connect. So these are some of the things that are actually just built in as part of DQS, so you can automatically start validating your data. I'm going to go ahead and close this. All right, the next section on the screen is data quality projects. Well, once you have your knowledge base of valid stuff, of course you're going to go want to use it. So I've got a bunch of samples here. I'm going to go ahead and look at some of the recent ones. And this shows you that we're validating colleges here. There's mapping, and this was an actual one that was run, and all of them were corrected in this instance. And it just goes to show you something that was run in the past. The tabs show you the status of the data when it was last run. Suggested values, new values, invalid, corrected, and the number of ones that are correct. And after the data is cleaned, then you have the ability to use it in and load it up and put it where it needs to go. The last section is the activity monitoring. So I'm going to go ahead and go into activity monitoring so you can see what kind of information is available there. So you can see that this particular job was run, and it was stopped and it was run successfully, and the various types of projects and when they were run and their names. It's just basically a status of what's going on. If you want to look at the profiler, which we'll be looking at when we were running our own projects, you can see completeness and then accuracy. All of these are warning. You can see here, suggested or new is at 100%, which means all of these were changed. But the data was complete. It does also show you missing data so that you can see that's available as well. The icons here up top will allow you to refresh it to see if something is coming in that you don't see it. There's obviously ranges you can do. And if you're just basically tired of looking at it, you can export the activity to Excel. All these options are available to look at, as well as the status of them. The other real key for administration, which is really important for data quality services, is your reference data. I'm going to go over third-party reference information, but sometimes you need to actually look to see if the information that you're getting is correct. For example, if you want to know whether or not a phone number is correct, yes, there are some rules you can do, like for example, a zip code, or excuse me, an area code can't start with a 0 or 1 if it's US. But after that, you might want to start looking to see if the numbers show up as being valid. Same thing with addresses. And that's what third-party reference information can do. You have the ability to either load something local or do what I'm doing here and look at the Azure data market, and we'll look at that here later on. For the general settings for cleansing, this is basically showing you the tolerance. So all of your data is evaluated to determine how correct is it, and has a minimum and maximum score. And if you want more things to show up for suggestions, you can start playing around with this and make it lower so that you'll see more items to be corrected, or make it higher if you just want the information to only show you valid information. Log settings, this basically tells you what's get logged. All right, so now that we've reviewed everything, let's get started and start using it. So what I'm going to do first off is show you a way that you can create your own domains, assuming that people actually know the data. You would know what's right. For example, I've got a list here of colleges that were created based on the information that was seen to validate whether which college somebody said that they attended. Now, all the people that I'm looking at were from California, so all the colleges were from California as well. You can see this is the correct college name. This is some of the ways that it comes in. The goal here being is that if your users know how the data is, they don't have to sit around and type it all the time. They can basically put in a spreadsheet the fact that, hey, we're for Kenyatta College, they get La Kenyatta sometimes. The other thing, too, is this domain corrects for what would be valid for your users. For example, as a lot of people know, there's another university called Columbia University, which is a very prestigious school and not generally anything that we would be seeing in the data for a for-profit college. They're generally talking about Columbia Community College. So instead of correcting Columbia to Columbia University, which depending on your business model you might want to do, here we're going to be correcting that one to Columbia College. And this is the kind of information that you can get from your users, or you can look at your data and evaluate to determine what's correct, and just use this straight out of the box. The goal is that this provides a starting point for correctness of data. Because let's face it, if you see a lot of mistakes, you start seeing patterns, you start seeing the same thing over and over again, and this just loads them up to say, hey, autocorrect this for me. I know I get crap data like this all the time. Let's just fix it. And this is just a list of the colleges that are the junior colleges in California that are used to provide this information. So, and you can see that I've got this stored in just in Excel, and it's a really straight up column data. I was reading actually on Microsoft's site that they say 1 out of every 7 people uses Excel, so which is just crazy when you think that's like 1 billion people who know how to use Excel, which is of course why they're relying on it so much for all the BI analysis. So since we have our college names, let's go ahead and use it. So let's create a new knowledge base. Again, this knowledge base is, like blob storage, it's just a container. So I'm going to call this Cali Colleges, and it's going to be list of colleges. Now, I know that you're probably most familiar with the domains, and I really appreciate people taking a perfectly good word and using it in a way that nobody gets it, but that's what they're doing. That's what Microsoft does. Sorry. So although you might think, hey, I want to create it from that Excel file that we just looked at. Yeah, you don't do that here. I know that would make a lot of sense, but yeah, no. This is where you would pull information if you had an existing knowledge base and wanted to add on to it, but leave the one that was there alone to just like make a modification to it, or you could import it from a DQS file maybe that you took from a different server. So to import what we want to talk about, we need to go over to domain management. And this user interface was basically designed to be very foolproof, which means that there's almost always a next button, and if the next button is not highlighted, that means you're doing something wrong and you can't go on. It also isn't always the fastest thing in the world. So okay, so we need to create a domain. All right, so what are we going to call this? Well, colleges, California. All right, so we can put in a description, data types, etc. I'm just going to say okay. Because now that I have the college created, now I can import my data, which is great. So I want to import my knowledge base data. Excuse me, import it, not export it. Hello. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click to the domain values. Again, not necessarily where you would think it would be. And what I want to do is it automatically puts that default value in there. That's okay, because we're going to import right over it. So we're going to go to domain values. I'm going to say that I want to import valid values from Excel. Great. All right, so I know where I leave my files, so I'm just going to pull up that document we just looked at. And when I do, I'm going to get an error. Now, I'm on a 32-bit OS, and I'm running 32-bit, I'm 64 OS, and I'm running everything 64. And Data Quality Services has a problem with that. So there is no way for this to work. So yes, I can read, so I'm going to actually do what it says and use a CSV. If you save it off as the 97 to 2003 version, yes, it will work as well. And I have headers, so I do want to use my first row as a header. So I'm going to go ahead and watch it import. And it told me that I had 267 values. They were all imported, and everything was successful. Yay! So let's see what we got. All right, so what you see what it's doing is it's correcting the information. So if it sees Alan Hancock, it'll automatically correct that. It also says that the original value is correct. If you go scroll through, you can see that's what it's doing for all the values. Great, so now we have our valid values loaded up from Excel. Go ahead and finish. And it says, do I want to publish a knowledge base with the latest changes? Sure, because if I don't publish it, I can't use it. So yeah, I want to do that. If you say no, then you're stuck in here for a while, and if you say cancel, same thing. So we're going to go ahead and publish it. All right, I'm successful. Yay. All right. So now that we've got our new Cali Colleges knowledge base, let's go ahead and use it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new data quality project. And I'm going to call this Cali Colleges project. And I want to use the knowledge base we just created, not the one that's in alphabetical order. So it's called Cali Colleges. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and cleanse it. Notice my button went blue. And the idea being that this would be something that business users could do. And since business users are going to use it, we're going to have them use Excel. This is exactly like the problem we had before. If you try to open up a standard one, you'll get an error. So I'm going to go with a CSV. Now I have to map my names, otherwise it won't work. And that's basically, and notice that, then my button went blue, which is basically telling me that I can go ahead and do it. Excuse me, this isn't the, so I'm going to go ahead and, actually I picked the wrong file here, sorry. I actually want CA Student University. Sorry about that. I just remembered wrong one. Same thing, school name. So this one will actually work. And I want to map it to my domain. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Let's go ahead and look at that so that you can see what I'm what it actually looks like, so that I'm not just leading you through blind here. So this is the Excel file that we're going to be reviewing. You can see the school names here. I've got Glendale Community, West Valley, and some other abbreviations that I need to validate to the right information so that I can validate it within my database. And this is the information that we're going to be validating against our other Excel file that had the valid information in it. So I'm going to go ahead and say Next. Obviously I want to start. Sometimes it's like so friendly, you just want to smack it. All right, so it's telling me that I have 10 records, and it corrected 8 of them. Didn't suggest anything, and has some accuracy. So it says that 90% were corrected, 10% were suggested or new. Okay, let's go ahead and look at Next, and take a look at the records. Okay, this is where it showed you before, but this is for the data that we actually looked at. So we'll go ahead and see what new is. All right, so a new value came in that wasn't in the but the Excel spreadsheet that we had with the list. So it doesn't know what to do with this. So it says, I got no confidence, I know the answer to this, so I need to correct it. This is the kind of thing that you want to have your business users doing. They're the ones who should be saying, hey, this is actually West Valley College. And once they've entered a valid value, this value will work from now on because it's going to be added to the domain. So even though it wasn't in the Excel spreadsheet, it'll be used from now on. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it, and watch this. Boom, went away. Went to corrected, which is here. And this is showing us the values that were corrected here: Barstow, Columbia College, Fullerton, Glendale Community, and LA Southwest was also there, and here's West Valley, which is also in our thing also done by West Valley. And you can see that this was modified by the user. And there was actually one that was actually correct. Yay, Diablo. So go ahead and say Next. And basically this is showing us that we now have valid output, which is a great thing because now we can go ahead and use it. Now I'm not saying that this is something that you would be doing forever and ever, amen, because your users are going to go stark raving mad if you make them correct every single file that comes in. But this is something that you do to build up your knowledge base so you have a really good database of things that are going to need to be correct. And a lot of times, hey, users are going to have to look at it because there's no way to figure it out any other way. So we're going to go ahead and put this into DQS staging data so that we can see the results that we get back. So we're going to put corrected colleges. And we're going to look at the data and the cleansing info. I'm going to go ahead and export that. Ta-da, it exported. Let's go ahead and finish it. Let's go out and look at our database and see what we have here. Refresh. Look at the corrected colleges. And we see that we have our corrected data, but we have everything that's was used for it. For example, here's the source and there's the output. This one was domain value because this means it was correct. This one was modified by the user. This shows the status of it. And this information is useful not necessarily for this iteration, but for later on when you're trying to analyze the results and use it in an SSIS package. Well, we've successfully corrected data, so using our own knowledge base, but let's look at another way or another knowledge base that we might want to employ. And I'm talking about Azure. Because let's face it, if you know colleges, you may be able to figure that one out on your own or query it using Power BI. is Power Query, but if you're actually talking about wanting to get a whole bunch of data from a known source, like say, I don't know, you want someone to validate all your addresses for you, you're going to want to go to the marketplace. A lot of times people I've heard say, hey, I'm not going to go here because it's expensive and it's going to cost me a lot of money. Well, okay, I get your point, because if somebody is correcting and creating really valid data, why would they want to give it away for free? Well, they do for proof of concept. And if you were like my client and you get, if you get $50 whether for each lead, then you can really start justifying the data. And the data that I'm using is Melissa data. And you can see that I've subscribed to that. I'm going to show you another one that you might want to use for proof of concept because it's really kind of cool. And that is Dun & Bradstreet. I'll see if I can find it. Well, can't find it, but it's like contact details in that. What this does is it'll validate all of the businesses. And again, 10 transactions a month before it starts costing you money, but it's a good thing to do a proof of concept, say, hey, I've got this thought, I can clean the data up, and then you're up to your business to see how much they value clean data. So when we go and look at this information, you can see that I'm logged in as myself. So let's look and see how I have what I've got loaded here. So I've got these Melissa data loaded, excuse me, and I'm automatically using that one. I'm going to go back to that, and it shows me that that I'm exploring this database and I've already checked it in. Great. So let's go back to data quality services, and you can see I can use 1,000 records before anybody starts charging me money. Which is, if you're doing something small, 1,000 addresses, that might be enough. So what if we go into configuration? You can see that I've added my data market account ID. This is for my account, and that I have gotten some subscriptions. Show it, pull it up here, and that will I'm already subscribed to, and I am subscribed to Melissa data. So we'll go ahead and close this and go back to using it. So I've created an address, a knowledge base here. I don't want to go in to take the time to go ahead and show you it again, but what I want to do is show you the fact that with address validation, obviously, if you're just doing one line, it's kind of silly. Who cares about one line? You need to know if the whole address is right. So you can create what's called a composite domain, which means it looks at not only just the address line, but the city, state, and zip, because all those things together is what makes up a valid address, not just having one item there. All right. So let's go ahead and create a project using the address validation. So okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to call this new project address validation. And we're going to use the knowledge base for address validation MD that I just showed you, and we're going to go ahead and say next. All right, so last time we went against Excel. This time let's go ahead and go against SQL Server. So I've got some sample data here, and I'm going to go ahead and look at it, and it's called SSIS clean address. And so what we have is street address. We've got the city, got the state, and the zip. By the way, if you do state code instead of state, it's not a reserved word in SQL Server. And so we want the address line, the city, the state, and the zip. Now see how this button just got enabled instead of view select composite domains? It realized that, hey, you want all that information, so let's go ahead and give you all the information. And it automatically will select what it thinks you want, which is the address validation. So let's look at that here real quick. So this is the street address information. You can see this is for Arizona mostly. It's got a city that's messed up. Queen Creek is not spelled that way. Scottsdale is not spelled that way. This city's missing. This state is missing. And what the heck, we just threw somebody in Georgia just for fun. Let's go ahead and say next. All right, so just like before, we can go ahead and run start to clean it. Let's go ahead and do that. And I know I'm only using 10 records, and you're thinking, yeah, boy, is this slow. And unfortunately, that is one of the drawbacks with it. It isn't the fastest thing in the world. As we know, what SQL Server does is SQL Server processes things as a set. And we're asking it to do a row by row, field by field, which isn't really its forte. So I'm going to go ahead and say next. And, oops, it's still processing. Too impatient, obviously. But this takes too long to do in the Excel file. It's not correcting anything. All right, let me go ahead and we'll pick the Excel file instead of the SQL to get it to do the right thing. So we'll go ahead and do Excel. And we'll go ahead and say sample address. Oops, not that one, because that one won't work. Sample address. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing. Address, city, oops. State, zip, address, city, state. Now here's a problem. It won't let me use the sample address because see how it's automatically coding this as decimal? Well, obviously it's not decimal. It's a number, but it's automatically pulled it in that way from Excel, so I'll have no choice but to go ahead and use SQL Server. So we'll see if I can get it to go faster. Oh, it's not going ahead and doing that, which is unfortunate. But I wanted to, but this is how you would do an address elevation using a third-party provider. And great, it gave me an error. Well, this is the basics on how to use the UI. But as you can see, this is kind of slow and unfortunately a little bit buggy. And also, as a user, you might have your users do this, but there's no way in heck that you're going to want to do this yourself, right? You're going to want to use an SSIS project, so you're not going to sit around and wait and click and wait for next all the time. So let's go ahead and look at how to do this in SSIS. So I've got a straight-up SSIS package here with a simple control flow with one data flow in it to validate data. So what I have is I've got a source address table. Let's go ahead and look at that. And this has basically got the 10 addresses we were just looking at in it. Go ahead and say OK. And next thing we've got is this component that you may have seen over here but not used it, data cleansing. And I don't know if you've ever looked at this, but this is actually kind of cool, which tells you that it's a data cleansing component, which isn't the most informative thing in the world, but hey, they thought so. All right, so we'll go ahead and edit this. And it popped it onto another screen. But it gives you this big old screen in order to set it up using the data quality services information already there. So we can see that it's got a data quality cleansing connection manager, and it's using the knowledge-based address validation, MD. And this has got these for the available domains. It's got city, state, zip, street address, and this is how it's mapping them out. You can see the output is city, state, zip, and street address output. And in case, and I didn't do anything with the advanced other than say that basically I want to enable everything so I can see what's going on. So I also put a data viewer in here so we can see what's going on, because, you know, that's kind of fun. And we're going to go ahead and do a conditional split. So basically, if the record's not invalid, it's going to be correct because that has a couple of different things that it says, and invalid does mean invalid. So basically, using the knowledge base that your users create over time, you can go ahead and create an SSIS package to use that based taking the information that they know to automatically go ahead and correct it. So let's go ahead and run this. Does anybody else besides me miss the fact that these things used to turn green instead? Now here's the data. Here's the viewer that we have here, and it's showing you how DQS processed our information. It didn't know what the heck this was. It knew that Queen Creek needed a space in it. For our missing value here, it said, hey, that probably should be Phoenix. And look, it knows how to spell. It didn't know Queen Creek, and these are the confidences that it has. So the remember we were looking before at the configuration? That goes for this too, and so you set your configuration to determine whether or not it'll auto-correct it or not. But since it couldn't figure out Phoenix, that would be something that you would have to add in your knowledge base. It just basically says that's invalid. So we'll go ahead and click through this. So let's go ahead and close this and see what we got. So we got clean addresses and unkempt addresses. So where is that going? Well, it's going to SSIS clean address. All right. And this one is going to unkept address results. All right, so let's go ahead and go look at those. So if we look at the clean addresses, we can see that they were all clean, and this is showing you the address information prior. And the address information prior basically shows you Phoenix, and that's the one that's not there. And it shows you how the various address information was corrected. And look, it corrected the zip code too, and it would know whether or not the zip codes were correct, whereas I wouldn't have a clue. And so all this information is automatically stored in your database as corrected. All right, so that's great. So let's go ahead and look at what we got for unkempt. And I'm going to have to check where this is because I don't remember. It's in sample test as well. All right. So we can see, I ran this twice, that it doesn't know what Phoenix is. Well, we knew that, and we know that it didn't get the zip code and that it said this record was invalid. And that's why it put it out here. So this is basically the way that you can see that data quality services can be used in an automated fashion to fix your data. So going back to the slides here real quick, I want to basically talk about when the best situation to use data quality is, because when everything is, there's an expression that if you have a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, and that's actually not what we want to do. So SSIS has got two types of transformations, synchronous and asynchronous, and I'm not going to go into huge detail because that's a topic unto itself, but basically it works out into asynchronous is slow. And synchronous is much faster because it loads it into memory. Well, there's two kinds of asynchronous transactions too, partially blocking like union all and fully blocking like DQS and anything else that does a row by row comparison. Because SQL Server is set based, when you're looking at rows to check things out, it won't be fast. So you might want to keep that in mind. So data quality services is really designed to be part of a total quality solutions. For example, take the client I'm working at now. They have a third-party application as the entry port for their business, which means that they're not in control of the way that the data gets entered, and if it doesn't do any data validation that they want, they're stuck. They can't fix it. Well, there's two ways to handle this. One is to fix all the data coming in to their data warehouse when the data is wrong, which means that either I'm writing ridiculous amounts of weird code for something that happens like 1% of the time, or I can work with the client to figure out how to fix your data coming in. It's a process thing. I mean, if their data is wrong because Karen in accounting screws it up all the time, and yes, the data entry screen shouldn't allow that, but hey, it does, and that's the way, that's life. If they go through data quality services and they're responsible for validating, they'll see that the stuff that she does always comes through wrong, and then go talk to her, and that's how you can really get the data fixed, because you can't always fix the front end. Microsoft has another tool. Data quality services is meant to be a part of the entire MDS process, to do the whole data management. So, Microsoft MDM. And that's another tool that I really would like to talk about, but you don't have enough time. But I recommend that you go check it out, because the idea is that there's only so much we can do, and it comes down to the fact that other people also have to be responsible for the data. It can't just be on the BI practitioner or the DBA or the person stuck with organizing it to take care of all the quality issues. It's just not possible, and they need to be responsible. And DQS has got that nice little front end so that users can be responsible. So for today's webinar, I wanted to show why to use data quality services. So we went through and looked at the user interface and talked about some reasons how to use it. We looked at how to use it in SSIS as well. We talked about situations where DQS would be a good tool to be used in certain environments, in certain situations. One thing I want to mention with the synchronous and asynchronous transactions, what that really gets down to the fact that if you have a whole lot of records, this is going to be a whole lot of slow, because it's just not possible to do a row-by-row comparison and have that not take a lot of time. And lastly, we talked a little bit about data governance, as DQS ties into that and help we make the data better. So I want to thank the Past BI Virtual Chapter for asking me to speak today, and I wanted to thank you for attending. I'm always interested in feedback, so if you'd like to give me some, please go to Speaker Rate and do that. And have a happy Thanksgiving. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time, and I can always answer anything at Desert Isle SQL or on Twitter as well. So Scott, do we get any questions?
We do. We actually have several questions, and I'll try to go through the bulk of them. There's, I think, about 10 when I last checked. So the first question, it goes back to when you're initially talking about what's called the KB. So it says, is it going to be done per column or per table? So when you're filling that knowledge base.
Basically, you can do it for a set, like when I showed for addresses. So the address and the city and the state and the zip are all part of one set. You can look at a number of fields within a given table for validation. You just don't have to look at one field. I just did that because it was an easy example. But no, you can group things together and look at certain parts of a table and evaluate them.
Okay. The next question, and I was wondering about this, there's actually a couple questions concerning this, is how is the DQS license? Is it enterprise only? Again, there are a couple questions on that particular topic.
It is, like Microsoft always does, all the cool stuff is only in enterprise, so it's only available in enterprise or developer.
Okay. Okay.
And so the licensing is then tied to those server versions. But I will say that the client is freely available. So if you have bought an enterprise license, I'm pretty sure about this, that you can distribute the client where you wish, because you're paying for all those cores already.
Sure, exactly. And someone was asking for the cost, and I'm sure that's very dependent on how you're licensing SQL Server to begin with.
Yeah, it goes back to the standard answer, which is if you have any specific questions about licensing, you really need to talk to Microsoft. Exactly. I don't know all the answers.
Exactly. The next one was a little bit more complex in the question that they asked. They said, do you know of any specific testing on scalability? For example, have you or someone you know run 1 million addresses through the I'll just say DQS successfully?
I will tell you that I have played with this, and it depends on the complexity of what you're doing. I will say that when you're going out to a a web-based vendor, that's kind of slow because literally you're going out to the web to get your validation information. So yeah, if you're doing that, that'll be a while. If you're doing something that's pretty easy, as in you're comparing like 1 or 2 fields, it's not terrible. But if you get a million rows, it's slow.
Okay.
I mean, if you're doing, yeah, I was going to say if you get much over like 250,000, yeah, we're talking hours and hours.
Okay. The next question is kind of a comparison that one of the attendees mentioned, that it seems that DQS appears very similar to the fuzzy lookups and fuzzy matching that's in SSIS. Is that a good comparison or not?
Yes, it is. I don't know this for a fact, but I'd be willing to bet that Microsoft used that extensively when they were creating DQS, although I don't know that for sure. I was thinking the same thing.
Okay. And then again, the next one is a little bit more, I guess, abstract or complex. Someone wants to know how the DQS and the MDS work together. What's kind of the overall process with that?
Well, the idea being is that they're part of a whole data governance solution. So Master Data Services means that you designate a data governor to be responsible for certain sets of data. Well, if they're going to be responsible for certain sets of data, they need to be able to do more than just look at it. They need to be able to fix it. And that's where DQS is a part of that as well. Okay. And also developing engines that can be used to clean up data.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read through a couple of these.
Fair enough.
A little bit more detailed. The next one, I'm not sure if you need to kind of punt this one. That I think that would be fine. It's just it mentioned something about your SSIS demo. What additional steps would you recommend to have the data stewards process invalid data?
Well, that is actually a really good question, because that is an example of what the importance of having a user actually look at the data that comes in. Because as good as Melissa Data is at validating it, they can't come up with every goofy abbreviation that somebody might come up with. So there's 2 ways of handling that. For one, what you could do is you could raise the threshold. I mean, that isn't really a situation in this case because it didn't come up with any matches. The other thing that you could do is go through the user interface and actually add that as a new valid value. So adding to the third-party validation with information that you know to add things that they didn't catch. Okay. So that is kind of a cool example and something you can do.
Okay, good. There's a couple of these that don't make sense, so I'll just kind of look through them. It says that this is, again, a little bit more detailed. I'm going to read it to you, and if you think you can answer it or not, or if we need to kind of punt it again. This person mentions that I have an address table with about 500,000 rows, 6 fields titled address lines 1 through 6 without an enforced address standard. Is DQS a solution where they can, where if it isn't the proper standard of forces to dictate which fields contain which range of values? I think what they're kind of asking is, can it be used as a method of enforcing different specific values for each of those 6 fields?
Well, it's kind of stupid. So basically, what you have to do is you have to be able to you have to be able to establish a set of rules, and you apply those rules to everything that comes in. And if you can, hey, great. If you can't, because it won't work that way, then it's not really going to help you. But I mean, for example, if you can run it through, say, concatenating addresses, address 1, address 2, address 3, address 4, address 5 together, and you could run it through 6 times in every single, and do the permutations and combinations to get every possible correct answer. That's kind of intense, You may not have the time to do that, but that would be the only way that you could do that. You need to be able to establish a rule and a pattern for validating the data that will always work against a known standard.
Okay, okay. Then the next question kind of centers around making the corrections that you mentioned, and the attendee was asking that the corrections should be made in MDS as opposed to on the DQS side, and whether that was the correct methodology or correct, I guess, process or not.
Well, you could argue either way with that. It would depend on how you had it set up.
Okay. Okay.
So, I mean, if nobody paid, if nobody pays for it, and this is all you have, hey, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to have buy-off from the business to get the right people involved in a real big data governance project.
Sure, sure. Someone else brings up the source issue. It's asking if Oracle can be used as a data source for DQS.
DQS has 3 basic data sources: old versions of Excel, and SQL Server, and comma-separated values. So you would have to actually translate it into that. And fortunately, it takes nothing else.
Okay. Okay. And then someone was asking if there's been some use cases, examples that you've seen for data matching.
I don't. Are there use cases? Yes, but then again, this can be used in a lot of different ways by a lot of different people, using complex rules, using simple, silly rules. I mean, it can be very helpful, especially if it's, like, for example, if you're paying literally $50 for whether or not the address is right or not, you're willing to spend the time and effort and energy if you get like $500 a day to do it. Hey, you've got a cost justification for doing it right there. If that's not your business, I mean, justification depends on how important it is to have correct data. That's a real big, actually, the importance of correct data is actually something that's really going on with a big data space, too, because if you've got a huge pile of data and you just start pulling stuff out of it and it's incorrect, how useful it is to have a giant 80 terabyte blob of data if you got a whole bunch of crap in it.
Exactly, exactly. I think that's the bulk of the questions, unless anyone wants to pop a few more in there. But right now, that's the extent of the questions. But want to thank you, Ginger, for your presentation today. We appreciate you taking the time. I know it's in the U.S. at least, it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. A lot of people have left the building, so to speak. So we appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you, Scott. I really appreciate being asked. And I will have an update on my blog for information received and the answers we had to this, so that if people who didn't make it can go there and read the answers if they had to leave early.
Exactly. And again, the presentation will be posted on YouTube. It does sometimes take a few days, up to a week. So if you know someone that wanted to participate in the webinar and didn't get the opportunity to, we will post it. Just tell them to wait about a week, and it'll be out there. So thank you for your attendance today.
Thank you.